This is episode number 202 of the Plein Air Podcast, and today we're sharing part 2 of the interview I did with Mark Sublette on his Art Dealer Diaries podcast. So I'm the guest interviewed today. All right, I hope that's okay.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it Plein Air. Others say Plein Air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, our announcer. You've made us shine, baby. You're doing a great job for us. Thank you for doing the announcing for the Plein Air Podcast. And everybody, welcome. I hope you are having a really terrific January. Now, this is an interesting day in history, isn't it? The 20th. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. If you're listening today on the 20th, the actual day of the 20th, just know that there's also something else big happening today, and that is that the deadline for Watercolor Live's $300 savings ends tonight at midnight Pacific time. So go to watercolorlive.com. If you're thinking about going, go ahead and do it so you can save that $300. Otherwise, the price goes up. Full retail price tomorrow. And by the way, it's still going to be worth it. It's going to be amazing. We got 35 top watercolor artists in the world, and they're going to be on, international artists teaching from all over the world, an audience of huge number of people from all over the world. It's going to be fun. Also want to mention the Plein Air Salon deadline. If you want to enter the January Plein Air Salon, you want to get your entry in by the 31st. And so go ahead and get that done so you don't have to worry about it. The average person enters about three or four paintings. And so go ahead and pick out your best paintings. They don't have to be fresh. They can be older paintings. A good painting is a good painting, and they need to be awarded. And one thing we've learned is that different judges have different things that they like. And so somebody will enter a painting and one judge doesn't give it an award, and they'll enter it again, and another judge doesn't give it an award, and they'll enter it again, and another judge says, oh yeah, this is great, it's my number one pick. So you can win prize money, but also you can be entered into the national competition and get your prize on stage at the Plein Air Convention, which is coming up in May. By the way, Plein Air Convention early bird deadline is going to be on the 14th, Valentine's Day, which is just around the corner, of course, and you can save $500. And of course, we don't know if we're going to be able to have it or not. We hope so. We think so. The officials think so, but we're all cautious about it. So if not, of course, you can get your money back. And so you can go ahead and save the $500. That way you get the savings back, or you can apply it to when we hold it. All right. Coming up in the magazine, Plein Air magazine, we have a feature on Philippe Gandiol on the evolving Impressionism and the question, can Impressionism still be revolutionary? And in this week's Plein Air Today newsletter, which you should be subscribing to as well, it's free, we share the story of groups of artists that are painting the rivers of Indiana as part of a conservation effort. I would love to be a part of that because I grew up in Indiana. Coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering your art marketing questions. But first, let's get right to the interview with me. I know, that's part 2. It's a little weird, me on my own podcast. But what it did is it gave me a break, didn't have to interview a couple people over the holidays. And also, Mark Sublette was able to pull things out of me. I don't know how he did it, but it ended up being a 2-part interview, which I don't know if he does often or not, but I guess I talk too much. So this is part 2 of the interview conducted by Mark Sublette.
What made the magazine you first started, was that a radio magazine before you did Plein Art Connoisseur?
Yeah, it was a complete accident. I stumbled into it. I was, so when I sold the radio stations in Salt Lake City, I made some money. and I decided I was going to retire. I was 33. I thought I had enough money to retire. Little did I know.
Right.
And I was going to get a motorhome and drive the world and see all my friends and my wife and I. And well, that didn't work out quite so well. But I was at the Utah State Fair before we moved out of Salt Lake City, and I saw this karaoke booth, and it was a giant boombox, a big, like human-sized boombox. And I went up and I said, "Where'd you get this thing?" And the guy said, "Oh, I built it for my karaoke stand." And I said, "Could you build more of them?" He said, "I probably could." So I struck a deal with him and I went into business with him, and I created a company making giant boombox. We put them on trailers and I sold them to radio stations around the world. And so because I had that business, I started advertising to the radio industry again. And this guy called me from a radio trade magazine called The Pulse of Radio. And I said, "I've never heard of this magazine." He said, "Oh, it's number one, how people do."
Right.
And, "Oh, we have all these readers." And I didn't really believe it. And I said, "Well, I'll try an ad. How much is an ad?" And he said, $5,000. I said, "Oh, that's too much." He said, "Okay, $2,500. So the minute he did that, I thought, okay, let me just see how far this guy will go. So I bought 5 ads for $100 each.
Oh my.
And I ran all 5 ads. I didn't get any results. Now, what I didn't realize at the time is that half of that responsibility was mine, half of it was his, right? I've got to make sure my ad pulls, but he has to make sure I have the distribution. So I was in New York City and I went to visit him to find out why my ads weren't working. And I wasn't really upset. I just wanted to understand it more. And he confessed to me that he was only hand mailing out 100 copies because he had run out of money, because the guy that owned it wouldn't put any more money into it because it was a miserable failure. So I said, "Who is this guy? I want to meet him." And he said, "Well, he's across the hall." So I went over, got an appointment, met with him, and walked out owning the magazine. And
Right at that
was
time, you did the deal right there and signed
right
up.
there.
Wow.
I mean, we shook hands, and then we, took a couple of weeks or months to paperwork it. And then, so I bought it and I tried to go with the same name. And I was putting a lot of money into it because I had just made a lot of money. So I had money. And I remember the president of one of the big associations took me aside at an event. And he said, "Listen, you're a good guy. You've got a good reputation. That magazine has a horrible reputation. The editor is a piece of what." And he said, "You don't want to be associated with that." He says, "You need to get rid of him and you need to change the name." Well, that was a real favor he did me. So I changed the name. I kept the guy for a little while, realized he was a troublemaker, so I got rid of him. And so I started a radio trade magazine. So that was like 32 years ago, something like that, 35 years ago. And we still have it today. We have another one in the TV industry, and then we do conferences and things like that. And I had to make a conscious decision to step away. I couldn't do it all. And I have a very capable lady, Deborah, who runs it. And she was working for me, and I thought she can make this happen without me. And so I stopped everything. I wrote for a while, and now I don't even write anymore. And so she runs it. I show up once a year for a big event we do in New York, and it's doing great.
And then somehow you started Fine Art Connoisseur somewhere along that.
We started Fine Art Connoisseur when we closed Plein Air.
Yeah, but what made you do that? Why'd you say, "I want to do an art magazine"?
Oh, well, there is a story behind that too.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, that's
too
big
many
stuff,
stories.
right? Yeah, no, that's good. I
Many
want to know about
stories. So because of Jack Jackson, I had fallen in love with realistic painting, figure and portrait painting. And at the time, there was a little magazine called the Realism Journal. And I think it was started by some of the painters in Minneapolis, which is kind of where the atelier movement started. And it was a fabulous little magazine. It featured a lot of, Bouguereau kind of things. And I still have every copy they ever did. But I fell in love with that, and I was trying to learn how to be a realist painter. And I realized that at the time, there was very few places one could go to learn that. And so I was really getting into it. And, I don't know that even maybe the Florence Academy was around, but nobody knew about it. And again, the internet was very shaky. So, there was the Art Students League, and there were a couple other places, but not a lot. And so I thought, I'm going to make this the flagship for realism and to turn this into a magazine that really promotes realism. We've got to do other things too, but I really wanted to focus on that type of thing. And so again, a movement kind of followed. And today there are, 500 ateliers. It was like the people who studied under Dan Graves or Jacob Collins started their own, and then their students started their own. And, there's a lot of 20-year-olds out there learning to paint. And some of these people are painting as well as any painter ever painted. So, obviously, I stumbled into Peter Trippi and ended up hiring him because he had this museum background.
Right.
And that was all because I had a dispute with my editor. An image appeared in the magazine that I didn't think was of high quality. And she said, no, it is high quality. And so I thought we need a tiebreaker, because I didn't trust my instincts because I don't have the education. So I had met Peter Trippi at Fred Ross's house, a cocktail party from ARC. And I went into the museum one day when I was in New York, and we met, and I said, how do I solve this problem? I need like a curator. He said, well, you need me. And he said, the museum is going to fold because the board can't agree on whatever. And so I'm going to be out of a job. So I hired him. That was probably 11 years ago. And that was a godsend because he's been fabulous.
Yeah, he understands art, and he understands realism art and European art as well.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, that's a good asset. Well, you seem to be good at figuring out what the people are that you need for your assets. I think that's part of success, probably.
That's everything. And, when I was a young entrepreneur, I wanted to do everything and touch everything. And I still have a little bit of a habit of trying to do that. And whenever I do, I get into trouble. You get really, really great people, and you leave them alone. I mean, I don't have any hand in content whatsoever at either magazine. I don't approve the stories. I don't approve the direction. If somebody calls me and asks me to help them get a story, I'll say, I'll make an introduction to Peter, but it's up to him. The only thing I'm involved with is Peter and I like to agree on, do we both like the cover we're going to pick? That's the only thing I do. Obviously I manage and run the company, but I've even got a great team that does all of that. So my goal is to kind of focus on thinking about the company, thinking about the marketing, figuring out where things are going next, and trying to do that. And then also trying to kind of lead the art community, at least our art community, in terms of kind of being there for them and bringing them experiences and things that are kind of fun for them to do.
Do you see that as part of your role as being a leader in realism and landscape plein air painting in our field?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not a self-appointed, I guess I'm a self-appointed expert. But I'm not necessarily qualified to be. I just felt like in both cases, there was leadership needed. Somebody needs to carry the flag and get people excited and kind of help things grow. And so that became very clear. The Plein Air magazine alone without the conference probably wouldn't have survived, but it was that conference where we got people together, got them enthusiastic, and word spread, and more people came, and doing the podcast and doing the newsletters and all that other stuff. And so I felt like we needed that in the realism side too. And that's why we started the FACE conference, Figurative Art Convention and Expo. And that's only gone on for like 3 or 4 or 5 years. And it's been a slow start, frankly. It's been much smaller than Plein Air Convention. It's Plein Air Convention is about twice the size of the Face Convention, but that's okay. I mean, it's intimate. We get, it's pretty rare to get, people like Jacob Collins and Stephen Assail. And, last year it was Dan Green and Wendy Green. And, I had dinner with him at the conference, and he died 2 months later. I mean, what a great opportunity to let people get to know people like that. And it's nice because it's intimate, because they, if there were 1,000 people there, it's a little tougher, but when there's 300, 400, 500 people there, you can sit down with somebody and have a drink with them. And I get notes from people. It's like, I couldn't believe I actually got to sit and talk to Stephen Assail for an hour. It's like, that's access. So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. You're a conduit is really what you are. You're a conduit.
Guess.
Yeah, that's right. You're a conduit to put artists together, established artists, but also those who really want to follow in that field, however they see themselves, whether it's just tangential or as a complete lifestyle. And that's a really powerful thing. I don't know of many people that I can think in our profession that have done that. So my hats are off for you doing that. You have a lot of energy. You have a lot of energy to want to do this. And which is one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, is just because you've done so many different things, and you have all these different shows as well, these monetary ones that people can win real money or get real money. Can you talk a little bit about those? Because those are things that people should know about, really.
Oh, you're talking about the art competition?
Yeah.
Well, I remember having dinner with Peter and Elaine Adams at the California Art Club, and something that they said continued to ring in my head. And they said that when artists start competing in a competition, you raise the level of art overall. They said that was the secret to the growth and the success of the California Art Club, is that they would have the gold medal show, and everybody tried harder, and it elevated the work of all the artists. And I thought that's what we need for Plein Air, because, you got a lot of early stage Plein Air painters out there who are mixing in. And what I don't want to see happen is, I don't want Plein Air to become synonymous with poor artwork or fastly produced. I mean, the classic answer that you've heard 1,000 times is, how long you been painting, or how long did it take you to do that painting? It was like 2 hours and 40 years. Right. It was, because it's a continual growth. And what I didn't want to see happen is there's a lot of people who are coming into this as a hobby, and that's great. Sunday painters, that's great. I love it. And some of them want to become professionals, and that's great. But what I want to do is make sure that we are always talking about quality, is, elevating your quality. And that's really why we start conventions and why we have training and videos and all that other stuff. It's because the highest satisfaction comes from always growing. I don't know if you remember Ray Strong, who was in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
I mean, Ray painted pretty much till the day he died in his wheelchair. And I remember him saying that, he was always pushing himself, trying to get better. And I think, this is why he lived to be 100 years old, and his mind was sharp and elastic, because, he's challenged. And I said on stage at the convention one year, the Plein Air is the new golf, because it's challenging, it's social, it's fun, it's creative. You're getting outdoors. But for people like me who don't golf or don't anymore, or don't hike, this is a perfect alternative. So the Salon was really about elevating people, trying to get people to get to the next level. And it's amazing to me. I was going through the entries. We have different people. Have you ever judged it?
I've never judged that. I've judged maybe 3 or 4 different art shows, and it's very taxing, quite frankly. I find them.
It is. It's a lot of work and not a lot of reward, but we should really talk about that. But the level of quality overall, compared to when we first started, it is pretty amazing. This past year, Dave Santiani's one, we had to do a online digital award program because we didn't do the convention. But when we were judging the last 50, the top 50, it was tough. I mean, they were all so good, and that's a tough job. And so that's a testament to everybody kind of stepping up and elevating. And I think the other thing that's really important that people don't really understand is that the minute you start entering competitions or putting yourself in shows, putting yourself out there, something clicks in your brain. You operate differently. Now, all of a sudden, you are looking at yourself as a professional or a semi-professional, and you're thinking twice. If you're, in the old days, it might have been, oh, I'll just put something out and see if somebody likes it. But now it's like, no, I'm going to keep working on that till it looks good, till it's right. So it elevates people. And of course, if they win in a particular category or something, it's just one more thing to add to that CV, because people like you need something to talk about.
Well,
Hey,
not only,
Eric
not
just
only
won
that,
this
but
award.
I think it actually does something more than even that. I think it can elevate somebody when it's that positive reinforcement that I was good enough to compete with all these people. I had professional judges and they chose my work. And it gives you this sense of confidence that you didn't have before. And I think when people win those kind of things, it just pops you up to another level. I remember Glenn Dean won, a award when he was like 22. And I think that I've never talked to Glenn about it, but I really feel that it probably sets something in his own psyche that says, okay, I've won I'm 22 and I won the whole thing. And rightly so. He should have won it. He was that good. So,
well, we have watched, we've watched people who didn't think that they had a chance of win. People like Elaine Bassa and Shelby Keefe and Jim Woodark. I mean, and the thing that's really satisfying is to watch what happens to their careers when they win. All of a sudden they're hearing from people like you who are all of a sudden paying attention to them. Would you be interested in our gallery? Or they're getting, instead of applying to go into a show, they're getting invited into a show. And their lives change. Shelby Keefe said, she was pretty known around Wisconsin because she would do the art fairs and things, but she wasn't known nationally. Now she's known nationally. It's changed her life.
Yeah. And we do
those things.
Those people
really
out
work.
there listening, I mean, artists, people like myself, we watch those, we see what's going on, and it could be somebody that's completely off our radar, not a clue. And, we read it in a magazine or see it and we go, well, let's see who this is and, and investigate. And sometimes it's like, wow, that's one I didn't know about.
You mentioned confidence. I wanted to tell you another story real quickly. I don't know how we are on time, but
A long format. We can go as long as we want.
Okay. Well,
There
you may
is no
regret
time
that. I do an event in June, typically in the Adirondacks. I call it Publishers Invitational. And it started out, I remember going to the Carmel Art Show and sitting around in a bar with some other artists one night. And one of the artists commented, they said, we never get to do this. Typically, when we come to these things, we're pretty isolated. We're working on our paintings. We don't want to paint side by side because we don't want to have the same painting. We're competing in a show. We're in our hotel room, touching things up and framing them at night. It's very busy. And wouldn't it be nice if we could just kind of have a week where we could just paint together? And I said, well, let's do it. I'll do it. And so I took over an Airbnb in Austin, Texas, before I lived here. A friend of mine owned. And I said, you guys come down. I don't think I charged them for it. They just paid for the room. And it was some pretty significant people, Carolyn Anderson and Jeff Legg and Howard Friedland and Susan Blackwood. And there were 17 of us total. And we just went out and we painted together for a week and we cooked at night. And we just had a ball. So I turned that into an event that I do charge for. And I still call it Publishers Invitational, but there's no invitation required. And I get typically 100 people. And we take over college in the Adirondacks. And we paint the beautiful Adirondacks in upstate New York, and we sit around at night and we play music, and we talk, and we just talk art, and we all put our artwork out. Well, one year, this artist came from the Northeast, and he was very gregarious, but very lacking confidence in his work. And he started putting his work out, and everybody was drawn to it. Everybody said, this artist is amazing. And he got so much positive feedback from that he decided that he was going to launch a professional career. And he went out and he learned by, he had never been to Plein Air events or anything. He learned by hanging out with all of us what all of that was about. And he ended up, he can't even come to the event anymore because he's always at shows. And that was Charlie Hunter. And Charlie's become a pretty big deal, but he gained the confidence. I saw his work. I bought a couple of his paintings, but also I said, this is good. I'm going to do an article on it. So I called Steve Doherty and I said, you need to look at this guy. So Steve did it. Maybe Steve was even there, did a story on him, and then that builds confidence, which other things build confidence. And so these things all matter. There's side effects. They may be packaged as, getting together for a week of fun painting, no competitions, just painting, but there are side effects. Sometimes consequences that, none of us ever anticipate. But I've met people on these events that some of which have become my lifelong friends. Others have met lifelong friends, and, they end up going places together and painting together. One group of people got so close to each other, they started their own little convention, just for their group, and they meet once a year. And so I love seeing that. I love putting people together and seeing. We had at the Plein Air convention, we do an orientation at the beginning for newbies, and the reason we do that is because I hate going to conventions and not knowing anybody, and have done that many times in other industries. And so they do an orientation. We do an orientation, and Tish on our staff puts people together, and they say, okay, you 5 people, you're now a dinner group. You go to lunch and dinner together every day. And so we had 2 people who were 2 dinner groups got together and started going together all the time because somebody knew somebody. And we ended up, a couple ended up meeting, dating, and got married from that. So,
well, they damn well better name their first kid, Eric, is what I have to say.
I think they were beyond the childbearing age.
Okay. Well, their dog then. Well, yeah, I think those kind of things are really important because a single artist, can say something to another artist, and the one artist who might be very well known, and he says something, it can be the smallest thing, like, you're really doing a good job. I like what you're doing. And that can change their trajectory, that one thing. I've heard
we all have
artists say that.
We all have to be encouraging to one another. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is that all right to ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, you and I met probably at the early stages of Plein Air Fine Art Connoisseur.
Yeah, that's right.
And, that was probably 15, 18 years ago. When you first got into the gallery business, what did you not understand that you understand now that has made a major difference?
I think the biggest thing from just a gallery standpoint is that you don't have to get everything, right? So when I'm a young gallerist, I think every great piece I have to get, and I'd be devastated if I wasn't able to get it, right? And now I know better. There's always another thing that comes by, and it has allowed me not to worry about things. If I don't, get a piece that I try to buy, because I deal in deceased work as well, right?
Yeah.
Or if I don't get an artist that, I really appreciate and want in the gallery, I don't worry about it. That's one thing. And I don't worry about what other galleries do. I look at them more as colleagues and not competition. I think that's a big deal too. I try not to worry about those kind of things. And I think it makes it easier for me to just worry about me and what I do.
So I want to mention that because, that's a really important part of maturity as a business owner. I used to be really uptight about my competitors. And, it's like, we got to beat them, we got to
Right.
pulverize them. And I don't know, something changed along the way. And I remember there was a defining moment in the radio business is we do this, we always have tried to lead in women's issues. And we do this issue about what we call the most powerful women in radio. And so my editors are like, here are all the people who should be on the list. And we're going through the list. And there's one of the people, and they keep looking over this person and passing over this person. And I said, why are you passing her over? And they said, because she's our competitor. I said, does she deserve to be on the list? And they said, yes, but she's our competitor. I said, no, she deserves to be on the list. We're not going to play that game. She's going to be on the list. And over the years then, as she grew, because we kind of prioritized it, she became number one on the list, and we put her on the cover of our magazine, and she was our biggest competitor. And that was a real test of one's integrity, because part of me didn't want to do it because it was like, I'm promoting a competitor, and part of me is like, no, this is deserved.
Right.
And I've discovered something about myself just recently, which is, and I probably should write about this for Sunday Coffee. We started this video business, video training business, and then we acquired Lilladol when Johnny Lilladol died, and we acquired CCP, same kind of a situation, a death. And so we've grown it to be a pretty big company, and we promote it very heavily, and it looks easy, right? So all of a sudden, all these other people are jumping in. When we started out, I mean, there were a couple of people doing it. Now there's 20 people doing it. And this is where I had to really test myself, because a lot of the people who are doing this are friends, are acquaintances,
Right.
people that I like and respect. And I can't, I just can't take a competitive attitude about it. And so I was kind of playing with this recently and thinking, here I am, I'm doing these things daily. I'll step back. I'll step back either last year or the year before at the FACE conference. I thought there are 3 or 4 people who are deserving to be at that conference on my stage, but they're competitors. And some of my team members are like, no, don't invite them, they're competitors. And I said, no, they need to be on the stage. Well, don't talk about them, no, they need to be on the stage. And I actually introduced them on the stage in front of everybody and pointed out that they were competitors and said, you need to do business with them. They do good products.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, but lately, because more and more people are piling on and because it looks easy, it's been like, well, now I'm doing all this daily stuff. What should I do? Because it's real easy just to say, well, I'll just ignore them. So I finally just decided, I've got to take an abundance mentality and believe there's room for everybody. And if somebody picks a competitor, it's not the end of the world. It's just, if they're doing a better job, then it just makes me want to step up and do a better job. But I brought that up because of what you said about competitors, but I had a competitor on my daily show today. It's the second or third one I've done. And it's very freeing at a time when we're going through, and I don't want to get political because I don't go there, but there's a lot of people who are looking at the world through the lens of money, and money is ruling all their decisions. And I realized that if I were cutting out competitors, it was money ruling my decision, not my sense of proper ethics. And so this is kind of something I've been struggling with lately, because it's tough. And, you have to explain that to your employees. It's like, well, why are you putting a competitor on? And, we just have to be better than that. But I think that your attitude about competitors is what stimulated that thought. And that is, you're really collaborators. I mean,
That's right.
it's in your world, it's like one of you has the right painting that I'm going to buy.
That's right.
And if it's not the right one, I'm not going to buy it anyway. It's the same thing for me.
Yeah. Well, by doing that, what you're doing is you're adding to the ecosphere of art. You're making the whole thing better. I have lots of gallery owners. I've had lots and lots of gallery owners that compete directly with me on my podcast, and I support them and I promote them. Why? Because they have interesting stories and they're part of, the whole history of what I do. And so what if my clients go and buy something from them? Great.
Right.
I'm happy for everyone.
Right.
They're still going to buy from me, and I learned something from them about their backstory. And that's what I find so interesting, are these backstories of, how people, how did you become what you are? And you're a photographer, you're an artist, you're a publisher, you're an entrepreneur, you do tech, you've done all these kind of things, but clearly what you're going to be known for, I think, and probably want to be known for, is that you were one of the pillars of art, and you're
well, that's very kind. I don't,
it's true.
I don't think of myself in that way. By the way, I applaud you for doing that. And by the way, you probably wouldn't have done it when you were 30.
No, I wouldn't have. I guarantee you I wouldn't have.
Yeah. And so I think that's a beautiful thing about maturity. I think that, I worked on the other business for, 25, 30 years. And, I struggled. Sometimes I remember I went 7 years without a paycheck. I mean, if there was a little extra money in the coffers, I'd buy some groceries or something. And I was telling one of my kids who was, dropping out of a class or something, and paying $40,000 a year for college. I said, it took me 15 years to save $40,000. And so there's a struggle that goes with all of this. I can't remember what my point was, but I think that I just have gotten to the point where, I remember what's going. I spent all that time doing something that I was chasing money, and I got to the point where I wasn't having any fun. I got into radio because it was fun, because I was on the air, but then I got into ownership and other stuff that wasn't nearly as much fun. And I just never made any money. I just was like treading water for a lot of years. And then I went to a conference, and the guy basically taught me how to reinvent myself. And it was Dave Ramsey, the talk show host. And he said something that just really clicked with me. That was, you need to approach your business from a spirit of generosity. If you make everything about generosity, your life will change. And that's exactly what happened. I came back to my team and I said, look, let's be generous. If somebody buys something, give them a little extra. If they can't afford it, just give it to them. Just let's be generous with people when we can. And I have had more satisfaction in my life in the last 15 years of doing this and being around art and being around artists and painting and being, getting to know people like you and art galleries. And there's never a bad day when you're around art.
That's true. That's true. I tell people that my hardest day as an art dealer was like an easy day as a physician. I mean, it's just, being in the art world is wonderful. An artist and being around artists is one of the great points of what I do, and for you too. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons you do it. Actually,
I think they're the happiest people in the world. I never have met anybody who's happier. I mean, there's a couple of grumpy ones here and there.
Yeah.
But I think they're doing what they love. And so that's why they're so filled with joy.
And they don't ever retire. I mean, they just keep going, like strong. They just keep very strong. They just go until they can't, until they physically have to pull them out of the chair, and then they die right away.
Yeah, but they live on. If they're any good, they live on.
Yeah, and he does. Yeah, he was friends with Dixon, actually. So what would you say as we kind of finish this up, because you probably deal with more artists than anyone, quite frankly. I know you do, because you're doing all these interviews every day, and you've done 200 almost 200 podcasts on PleinAir Podcast. By the way, I recommend people to listen to it. I listen to it. Actually, I've started listening to it and really enjoy it, and learn things about artists that I didn't know. But what would you?
Would you be my guest on the PleinAir Podcast?
Yeah, I don't paint though.
That's okay. They need to know about you.
I'm not an artist.
I'll make that happen.
What would you say to artists out there who are thinking about going into this profession?
Well, just go for it. I mean, it's not all romance and flowers. It is tough work, but it's going to be very satisfying. You know, I teach art marketing. I've dealt with lots of people who have a lot of physicians, by the way, who learn to paint. And you know, I had one physician tell me, he says, you know, I just don't care if I ever do another heart surgery. It's like, you know, once I've done it 3,000 or 4,000 times, it's like, you know, it's almost like driving a car.
It is.
It's not quite like that, but, and I don't want to diminish that. Certainly want the right one on my heart. But I think the idea is that if you're in something that you are not waking up every day and jumping up and down with excitement about going to work, then you're in the wrong thing. I think that there has to be a transition, though. What I don't like to see is, I don't like to see hold your nose and jump in the water. What I like to see is make a plan, start developing, because it doesn't happen overnight. Start developing your work at the higher level. The minute you make a commitment to be a professional, your work will start moving to a higher level. And then once you do that, your work will start, you know, you'll be better at getting it exposed and so on. But what I like to do is I like to say, you know, you're up here with your income, and let's say you want to start your job as an artist full-time in 2 years. You need to look at the last 2 years of that income as funding your business. So then while this income is going on, this income here, I can't do it backwards, is growing. And you want to get to the point where you grow it so it's at the same level or higher, so that by the time you're ready to stop or retire, that you haven't skipped a beat. And that, because nobody wants to suffer. You know, this whole idea of the starving artist is not really very romantic. So I would say that. The other thing I would say is, we become artists because we see the world differently. We have a different lens. We probably want to project our feelings or our joy or our anger or whatever art is projecting to the world, because we see things differently. And we want to be artists because we don't want to be business people or accountants or doctors or whatever it is, or we're tired of that. And so we tend to develop this idea that I'm an artist now, I don't have to do any of that stuff. But the reality is, and you deal with these people all day, every day, and you get some that are highly professional and some that don't show up when they say they're going to show up.
Yep.
And so you have to be willing to know that, just like anything else in life, there are times when you have to develop muscles, right? You know, if I'm getting a little flabby, I got to go to the gym and I got to work on my abs, or you know, I got to keep my cardio going. You have to develop muscles. You know, when I'm telling my kids, because my kids are in college and they're learning to manage money, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you have to develop muscles in learning how to manage your money. You have to develop muscles in saving money. You have to develop muscles in making your house payments one day, and you know, being able to pay for the kids' college funds. And you have to develop muscles in all things. If you develop muscles early on in your career as an artist, if you develop marketing muscles and dare I say business muscles, it'll change your life. Now, I have seen, I took one artist the artist did it, but I coached this artist from near bankruptcy to being a fairly wealthy person in 5 years. It can happen. you and I both know artists who are multimillionaires.
Yep.
We also know artists who make a lot of money who can't hang on to it. And we also know people who can barely make a living. If what I've learned and discovered from dealing with all these artists over the years, including people whose names will go down in history as great artists, they all have marketing muscles. They may not appear to have marketing muscles. They may be very folksy and make you think that, oh, I was just discovered in a drugstore and some movie producer came in and found me. But no, these people are marketing all the time. That's not necessarily visible to you, but they're marketing all the time. You look at somebody like Richard Schmid, he's a brilliant marketer. I mean, even now at his age, he's writing books, and those books are supporting keeping his art market alive and all the other things. And those are the things that we all have to do. So if you develop muscles in marketing, it'll change your life. There are artists out there who are wealthy, and I'm not, by the way, success isn't about money. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. But there are artists out there living their dreams. There are artists who are wealthy who are not good painters. And there are artists who are good painters that have never sold a painting in their life. There are painters out there, and I've met some who are as brilliant as any painter alive that cannot get up the courage to show their work to an art dealer or won't do it because they feel like they're selling out. So if you learn the marketing, it'll change your life. And don't tell yourself it's selling out. It's just developing muscles. You're still an artist. It doesn't change who you are. You're just putting on a different hat, right? One day you got to put on your accounting hat. You're going to have to balance your checkbook. Another day you put on your marketing hat. Another day you're putting on your shipping hat. And that's just what you have to do. So embrace marketing. I was thinking this morning on the treadmill that because I was listening to something about their kid, a podcast or something, their kid went to art school and struggled, and, out of art school, they struggled. And I was thinking, I need to put together a program that goes in every art school in the world that maybe it's an online program. Maybe we do it for free. I don't know, but something that says, here's how you develop those muscles. I have some stuff that I sell in a book and some stuff, but something that really gets into it, because, if you did a training course on how to become an art gallerist and how to run an art gallery business, you've got, 30 years of experience, and it's hard to beat that 30 years of experience.
It's true. Well, I think it would be a very successful for the artist because it is a business, and you do have to understand how to market, how to, and of course, in this world, it's not just marketing your brand, but it's also getting it out there on all the different platforms, whether it's YouTube or social media, TikTok, whatever it may be. You have to embrace those kind of things, or you're going to struggle, or you better have some very, very good galleries that are doing that job for you.
Not only do you have to embrace them, you have to understand them. Facebook and Instagram are two of the most misunderstood medias. I'm sure you encounter this all the time. There are people out there who, because they're posting things, they think that's their marketing strategy. And, it can work for some people, but there's so much more to it. I mean, I'm a big advertiser in these platforms. I spend a lot of money in these platforms. I hire consultants who teach us how to do it right. And we made a lot of mistakes and burned through a lot of money by, paying for boosting and things like that are completely useless. So, there's a whole process. And the other thing about that is that marketing never changes. The platforms change, but marketing never changes. The principles of marketing that worked 100 years ago still work today. There's certain principles that have to occur for marketing to work. And those principles need to be employed on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and TikTok and everything else. And if you don't employ them, it's still not going to work for you. So you have to learn those basic principles.
Yep. Call to action kind of things. Yep.
Yeah. Copy, headlines.
Yep. And some of it's, I think, instinctual for some people probably. And for others, they need to do just what you said. You hire somebody, you get somebody that helps you and shows you what you really need to do. That's a professional, right? I mean, if you're going to go and If you have a tooth that needs to be taken out, you're going to go to a dentist. You're not going to go to, your vet. You get the right person that helps, and they might both can take out the tooth, but the one that does the dentist is probably going to a little bit better job and less painful for sure.
To that point, the most important lesson I've learned in the last 10 years is that, and I wish I'd have learned it 30 years ago, is that if you can mentor under the highest, most successful people in the world, you will skyrocket. So the one thing that changed for me, I'm not saying this to sound to be braggy or anything like that. We hit the fastest growing companies in America list each of the last 5 years in a row.
Wow.
And the one thing that made the difference is I started joining mastermind groups, and I pay a lot of money, and it seems ridiculous to pay a lot of money, $35,000 a year to be a member of a group, to go to 4 meetings a year and maybe talk a couple of times on the phone. When you were around the best of the best, the people who, there's 30 other, in my case, CEOs in my group. They all have different problems. They all approach things differently. You learn from them. They learn from you. Some of them become experts in things. I'm in one mastermind now. I've been in 3, and one of my other masterminds had the world's best online marketing people in it. And I can pick up the phone now, even though I've not in that group anymore. They've all become friends. I can pick up the phone and call anybody and get advice on things. But when you're masterminding with people, imagine if you wanted to be in the gallery business and you could pay some amount of money to study under Mark, yeah. You're going to save them 20 years of mistakes or 30 years of mistakes. And that's the one thing that I have a young nephew who's starting a business. And that's the thing I said, look, you won't have the money, but take $20,000 or $30,000 and join the right mastermind. I'll give you names of the right masterminds. Go join those. You will skyrocket. They're, just the connectivity alone, with the world's best people, it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think especially in art, because art is really word of mouth and contact and who and those kind of things. Those are clearly important in the art world.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. And if you study under George Carlson versus me, you're going to make a whole lot more progress with George Carlson.
I would even like to study under George Carlson just to see what he does. He's an amazing artist.
Yeah, he sure is.
He's one I haven't had on my podcast yet, but I want to have him on. Have you had him on? Have you had George?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have not.
We'll race for that one.
I've had him live at the Plein Air convention though.
Yeah, he's something else. Yeah,
he's a legend. He's pretty incredible. And to flip from a top sculptor to being a top painter. I had a conversation with George and Pam. We were at dinner, and I said to George, George, how did you get your prices so high? He said, I don't know, ask Pam. And I said, Pam, how did you get his prices so high? And she said, I just saw how many hours he was putting into it. I calculated what we needed per hour. And I just said, that's what the painting should cost. And they got it. The first time he sold a painting, he sold it for a huge amount of money.
Yeah. And it's more now. I
hope so.
It is. I think it is. I've always wanted, I don't have one of his paintings, but I'd like to. I've had some of his sculptures, but his paintings, he puts an immense amount of time into them.
Yeah. Well, he'll spend 6 months or a year on a painting.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, Eric, it was a wonderful talking to you. And I'll be happy to come on your podcast. You just let me know when. And, thank you for what you're doing. It's really important.
Thank you.
We need you out there and your energy and doing all you're doing every day. I'm just so impressed that you can do it. I can't do that. I can do what I can do, but I can't do that. I can't do an hour a day, every day, interviewing people. I'd be wiped out.
You could do it. I think you should start going to daily.
No way, baby. No way. I do one educational video a week and I do one podcast a week. And that's really all the time I have.
What is the educational video?
I just try to put all my knowledge out onto the web about things that I have seen or know, so they're, little 3-minute to 5-minute videos. And you want to know about how to start an art gallery or, how to see a Navajo rug and know a fake from a real one. And, Yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years now. So every week I put out an educational video on something that somebody is interested in.
And we find that at the same place that we find the podcast.
Yep. It's all on my YouTube channel, Medicine Man Gallery YouTube channel.
So where's this all going? What do you see? Um, what do you see the future of your business being?
Same as it is. I mean, things are going to change. VR is going to change things when that, really hits. I mean, it's there, but it's going to change the way the art business is run, and people who are not embracing the internet full bore, and, as an art gallery, I think are in very deep trouble, or artists for that matter. And, I think content is critical. It's been critical for a while, but I think it's even more critical. So, I think that's the name of the game, quite frankly, is content at this point.
I think there's one missing word, and I think it's trust. The idea of curation will always rule all things. Content with curation is much more powerful than content without curation. And to have somebody like yourself who you could pick up the phone, know that you're going to stand behind what you're offering, know that you actually know the difference between the Navajo rug and the incorrect rug in the painting, because I know that's important to certain collectors.
Me.
To know the quality, to know that this is not a fake, because that matters. That trust is huge.
Yeah, and I think the fact I put those out there, that says I have the confidence that what I'm saying I think is correct. That, and if I miss something, I'll correct it. So I'll be the first one to say, nope, let's change that. That's incorrect. Or I've learned something, that's more important that I didn't realize. And as a good art dealer, probably in any field, not just art, but you really need to be able to learn every day and you need to be curious, and you need to be able to learn new facts and things and incorporate them. You can't be stuck in, oh, this is how it is. This is how I've done it, because things change, and there's,
when everything crashed in 98, there were two things going on. First off, there was financial crash. And secondly, there was a perfect storm of the internet was kind of taking hold. And as you remember, there were a lot of galleries that failed back then. And a lot of that was because of those people did not do what you just said. And that is that they wanted to cling to the way things were always done. And I suppose the equivalent of that for an artist would be clinging to the way you've always done things. I mean, I think you probably are looking for growth in artists, but also artists have periods, right? They have times when they're, okay, how many more of these can you do? You've got to evolve to the next level, or do a new show, or do something new.
Yeah, I always tell all my artists, I don't ever tell them what to paint. I don't do those things. I want them to paint what they're interested in and what moves them. Even if it's a subject matter that may not be quite the area that I may do well in, I still want to see it, because I know if they connected to the art, that it's going to be a good painting, and I'll probably be able to sell it, and they'll be happier, right? They're happier human beings. I'm not going to tell somebody I need more cloud paintings, I need more this or that. That's just, I think that gallerists that do that are on a fool's trail right there, quite frankly.
I would agree with that. I call it more little red barns.
Oh God. Yeah. I've never done that to an artist, and I hope I never do. I might say this is doing well for you, and they can take it from there.
Yeah, and if if it's their choice.
Right.
Now, I do have a little differing philosophy on that, and that is that if it comes down to cleaning toilets, not that there's anything wrong with that, or painting a few little red barn paintings because they're going to sell, I would probably opt to paint a few little red barn paintings because I know they're going to sell, because at least I'm painting. I have friends who paint for other artists, and then the other artists sign their names to them. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends who put paintings on eBay at low prices with different names on them because they need to survive. But I think, survival and painting, if you can paint and survive, it's a good thing. But ultimately, if you're not doing what you love, it's going to show up in your work. I remember an artist we both know who's a friend, who decided that he wanted to get into the Western world because everybody was making all that money in the Western world, or so it appeared. And he started painting Western paintings, but you could tell his heart wasn't in it. And so can the viewer.
Yeah. Yeah. Chasing the market's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's writing or painting, you don't want to write about vampires, because that's the thing. You got to write what's in your heart, what's in your head, and what moves you. And it shows, same with art. Yeah. Any artists out there, that would be my take, is for artists, if I were going to give a suggestion, is, paint things that really inspire you, that you feel you want to go and do, and not just because your dealer says, I need more cloud paintings,
Right.
Give them something else, give them what you like. If you like painting clouds, great. But just, if you've got that dealer who's pushing you for product, which I hate, then maybe you got the wrong dealer.
Well, and I suspect that's one of the reasons you've survived as long as you have.
Yeah, maybe so. Yep, maybe so. I've trusted my instincts on that one. Well, I hope I can do another 20 years. I'm coming in on 30. So, and you've been in business now for 40 years, right?
Oh, at least.
Yeah, at least. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for taking your time. Have you done your Facebook Live thing yet today?
Yeah, I did. I do it every day live at noon. And then we pre-record the 3 p.m. So,
yeah. And the podcast, when does your podcast drop? Just so people will know.
I don't know, maybe Mondays.
You have a certain day. I don't know.
Yeah,
but there's a lot out there. There's almost.
I think Mondays or Tuesdays.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful archival for people who want to go and listen to artists. There's almost 200 podcasts, I think, that you've done there.
Yes. Well, I just recorded the 200th. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really good. I've listened to some of my artists. In fact, one of the things I do is I won't listen to your podcast on an artist that I want to interview, because I don't want it to, I want it to be fresh for me.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. But it's really fun to go back and hear your podcast after I've done one of my artists or some other artist, and hear the different takes and things that I missed or things I didn't consider, and which is fun.
I think you're a better interviewer than I am.
No, that's not true.
No, seriously, you're able to get me to talk about things I haven't talked about in years. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm interested. I truly am. I really want to know that story. I have to know that story. I can't understand you as a person unless I get those little, nuggets of your life, which I think I got a few of them. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing too, because you don't have to give those nuggets out. And I appreciate it that you did.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yep. All right.
I'll get to Tucson. I'd love to see you. It's been a long time.
Definitely. All right, Eric Rhoads, thank you so much. Plein Air Magazine, Fine Art Connoisseur, all his podcasts. Go check him out on his website. There's lots of content. If you're bored and home, he can fill all your time for the next 20 years. You have so much content. It's amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you on Sunday, because I'll be reading your Coffee with Eric.
All right. Thank you.
I do. That's the first thing I do every Sunday now, as I go read it.
Oh, good. It's the first thing I do every Sunday too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm never doing a blog like that. Too much more. I can't handle it. So, all right. Good for you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks again to Mark Sublette and for interviewing me. It was an honor to be on my own podcast and an honor to be on your podcast. So we really appreciate that. Are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
Okay, well, in the Marketing Minute, I answer your art marketing questions. At least I try. I usually have seeing them cold. I read these before I started recording, so I actually have read them, but I haven't thought about them yet. And email your questions to me, eric@artmarketing.com. Also, go to artmarketing.com. Is a great resource for ideas on marketing. It's free. Here's a question from Al Harris in Wichita, Kansas, who asks, is there a way to use a conferencing program like Zoom or Google Hangouts to help sell my art? I think they closed down Google Hangouts. Did they not? They came up with a new name, or they changed it or something. A platform like Zoom. Well, anything is possible. And if you come up with something, let me know. I think the problem that I would see with this is that, first off, I'm not sure there's a compelling reason that you can get a bunch of collectors together if you're thinking about collectors together. Now, you could send out an email blast or something. You could say, listen, I'm going to hold a special sale on Zoom, trying to raise a little money for this time of year, or, I'm just going to hold a special sale, and I'm inviting you guys to come, and I'm going to review some of my works, and maybe we'll do a little bit of an auction or something. You could try that. I don't know if I would attend it or not. I might, but anything is possible. And the one thing I've learned over these massive amounts of decades that are piling up on my back is that just when I think there's an idea that won't work, somebody comes up and does it. So I'd like to see you innovate that, Al. And I don't know the answer for you, but Zoom is a wonderful platform. I hold cocktail parties on Zoom once every month or two. We paint along together. It's a great opportunity to communicate with people and just talk to people. And maybe, if nothing else, you could just say, hey, I want to get together with some of my collectors and have you get to know each other. And, you don't have to try to sell something. They're going to appreciate you out of the goodness of your heart. So you try something like that. You got to have a list of people that you're going to invite, though. And that's all about trying to build up your list. And I think that's an important thing to be doing. List building is probably the number one exercise that I recommend for every artist because it's free. It doesn't take any effort. It takes a little effort. And, if you get 10 or 20 names a month, you're golden. I mean, if these are people who really are potential buyers, 10 or 20, you might not sell 10 or 20 paintings a year. So that's a pretty cool thing. So I would recommend starting with list building. And then once you've got a list, you start getting to know your list, get them to know you, and then maybe you invite them to something like this. Here's a question from Tom Florence in Atlanta. It would be cool if it was Tom Florence in Florence, wouldn't it? Anyway, I digress. Tom Florence in Atlanta, Georgia asks, when do you know it's time to copyright your art? Well, I am not a lawyer, and if you scroll back, and I can't remember the name, but if you scroll back a year or so, maybe 2 years ago, there's a copyright attorney that I interviewed on the podcast, and it says that it's about copyright, and that would be a good thing to do. I don't want to give legal advice, but I will tell you this, that most of the artists that I know will put a copyright signal on the front of their paintings. Not all of them, but at least if not there on the back of the painting. I have a rubber stamp, if you will, that basically, I don't know if I could pull it out of the drawer now, but yeah, I'll try it. Where is it? All right. Yeah, I got it right here. Okay, so I have this rubber stamp. I got to get it updated because it says 2020. But it says, be Eric Rhoads, artist, copyright 2020, all rights reserved, beericrhoads.com or ericrhoads.com. Now, the reason I do that is I stamp the back, and I kind of want to put people on notice that all rights are reserved. In other words, they can't, just because they own my painting doesn't mean they can reproduce it. And if I have that on there, that's a really good starting point. Now, you can go through a process of copywriting each individual painting, and you can do that online, and there's a fee associated with it. A lot of people do it. A lot of people don't do it. The question is, what are you trying to prevent? And I think what you're trying to prevent is somebody lifting your image and making money on it by selling it on calendars or other such things. Now, the reality is that protecting a copyright can be expensive. Getting a good copyright attorney can be expensive, but it can pay volumes in protecting you down the road. Now, I had a buddy. We were walking through this mall, and there's an art gallery there that he used to be in. I walked by and I said, "Hey, you still in that art gallery?" He says, "No." I said, "Well, they still get your work on the wall." He said, "No, they don't have any of my work." And I said, "Well, let's go ahead and see." So there were like 30 of his paintings on the wall, and he just was quiet. I said, "Tell me about the artist." They said, "Oh, that's so-and-so." They mentioned his name. And I said, "Well, this is the artist right here." And I introduced him. "Oh, it's nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah." They didn't have any idea they were doing anything wrong. They had bought him out of a catalog. They had been copied. Somebody had seen him online. They copied the paintings from the pictures online. They signed his name to them, but they sell them in a catalog. So you can buy any of these paintings, and they're quote unquote originals. Well, he had no idea that, of course, so he was kind of stuck. And so that becomes a problem when there are countries that are not upholding copyrights. And that's a whole nother issue. Some people have been successful in fighting that. Some people have not. I think the question is, what's the likelihood of somebody copying one of your images? And you have to decide from there. But I do put a copyright on every one of my paintings. I sometimes I sign the front and put a C and the year and my signature. But a lot of galleries don't want the year on the front of the painting, because if the painting doesn't sell, they don't want it to appear old. So you're going to have to make that decision. Anyway, that's my thoughts on copyrights.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Hey, a couple of reminders. I'm going to be on every day at 12 noon on Facebook and YouTube. Just search Streamline Art Video. That's 12 noon Eastern. I interview artists and other such things. Also on every day at 3 p.m. And every day at 3 p.m. I'm giving you samples of the hundreds of art instruction videos that we've produced, and that's kind of fun. Also, Watercolor Live's deadline is tonight at midnight if you're listening to this on the 20th of January. It's coming up at the end of the month, and so you don't want to miss it, but you could save $300 if you get in before midnight tonight at watercolorlive.com. Also, Plein Air Convention, we hope will happen. Valentine's Day savings, $500 if you register before Valentine's Day. Get that done, pleinairconvention.com. It's refundable if we don't hold it, all right? And also, by the end of the month, you want to get registered and get your paintings entered into 3 or 4 best paintings, always a good idea, into the Plein Air Salon before the end of the month. If you've not seen my blog where I talk about art, life, and philosophy and other such things, check it out. It's called Sunday Coffee. It comes out every Sunday for free, and you can find it at coffeewitheric.com. It's always fun doing this. Let's do it again sometime, like next week. I will see you then. My name is Eric Rhoads, and I'm the publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. That's Rhoads, R-H-O-A-D-S with no E. I'm going to say it again so you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, R-H-O-A-D-S with no E. Eric Rhoads. All right. Find us on outdoorpainter.com. And remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. We will see you soon.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.